Good evening, and welcome to the May 13th meeting of the Zoning Design and Review Board. For all of you in the audience that need any, there are agendas on the wall, and please remember to turn off all your cell phones. And we will start with a roll call. Sandra?
Member Cook?
Here.
Member Janes?
Here.
Member Laz?
Here.
Chair Durham?
Here.
Let the record reflect that Member Scoggins is excused.
And we will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And next we'll move to the adoption of the agenda. I do know that unless there are any concerns, we'd like to move 8.2, the discussion of the revised staff report for the Miller Owens residence, up above 8.1, which is the main discussion for this evening.
I'll move to adopt the agenda with 8.2 and 8.1 reversed in order.
And a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Then we will start with 8.1. After number 4, the approval of the minutes. Did anybody have any questions or concerns about the minutes? All passed minutes?
All passed.
Very good. Would someone like to move to approve the minutes?
I'll move.
And a second?
Second.
Very good. All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. So we shall move to public comment. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak to anything not on the agenda this evening? Not seeing that, we will move to the consent calendar, which there is none. And public hearing, there are no items as well. So we will move to our 8.2, which is the revised staff report for the Miller Owens residence. Sandra?
Great. Correct. Tonight you have before you a revised staff report, and the changes are indicated in red line version. We have deleted a sentence that references a survey of the subject property and replaced it with a display plat map prepared by Riker Spence that indicates the house sits directly on the property line. It was noted that that could have been the case in the staff report, and so the analysis was that the structure was nonconforming as to setback, but it was deemed to be immaterial to the application because they were not increasing the setback. So it's not a substantive change to the decision you made in March, but we thought it was important to change the staff report to accurately reflect conditions. So it's presented to you for your information tonight.
Thank you, Sandra. Are there questions from any of the
Yes.
commissioners?
It's my understanding an adjoining neighbor requested this correction to the staff report. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Has the applicant been provided with a copy of the revised staff
They
report?
have. Neither party objects. They're both fine with it.
No further questions?
Thank you. Any other questions? Very good. Then we shall move on to, excuse me, 8.1, the master development plan, French Laundry.
Mr. Durham, business activities preclude me from participating in this, and seeing no other meaningful items on the agenda after it, I will wish you all a good night.
Thank you, Commissioner Janes. And I will state that I am within the sphere of conflict, but to allow for a quorum tonight, I will stay on, and that will be duly noted. We're not making a final decision. We're just making recommendations to the council as well, so that will be noted.
All right.
Very good. Sandra?
Good night, or good evening. Tonight you have before you the master development plan for the French Laundry remodel and expansion, and there are two parcels that are the subject of tonight's staff report. One is the French Laundry at 6640 Washington Street, and the other parcel is the adjoining parcel to the south. And the French Laundry property is an approximately 11,000 square foot parcel that's developed with the French Laundry, and that's a 62-seat restaurant. The French Laundry is on the National Register of Historic Places, and there are two other structures on site, both that house support structures for the restaurant. One are the restroom facilities, and the other is an office and storage space. The adjoining parcel is an approximately 7,800 square foot parcel, and it's developed with two single-family residences, neither of which are listed in the town's historic resources inventory. And both of these houses were developed prior to adoption of the zoning and design ordinance, and they don't comply with current standards for FAR, parking, and open space. So the proposal is for really a complete renovation and expansion of the support facilities for the French Laundry. And the applicant indicates that they're necessary to maintain the high level of guest experience that's expected for guests to the French Laundry. So I will describe the proposed improvements starting at the north end of the property and moving south. And the first is the attached kitchen. And the existing kitchen will be completely demolished so that a larger kitchen can be rebuilt in its place. And you can see that elevation shown in the slide here. This is the Creek Street elevation. And the top of the slide shows existing conditions. The lower half of the slide shows the proposed conditions. And what you can see is that the existing kitchen features varied heights, roof pitches, and siding material, and that some of the roof-mounted equipment is visible from the right-of-way. What the new kitchen does is simplify the massing and utilizes a double gable roof line that will completely shroud all of the roof-mounted mechanical equipment. And as you can see, the addition is contemporary in appearance and it utilizes a minimalist design in order to highlight what's special about the French Laundry in that building that's on the National Register. This slide shows the view from the courtyard and a little further back facing north. And on this elevation, there will be a custom butt-glazed fritted glass wall with a geometricized landscape pattern in it. And that's shown as the dark shaded area toward the center of the slide. And this floor-to-ceiling corner window will provide open views into the kitchen so you can see the mechanics of what's going on inside the kitchen. And it's been presented as a prominent design element that's intended to blend interior and exterior spaces. And as you'll hear later, it will be on the new approach to the French Laundry front door, so an item of interest. The new kitchen will be approximately 2,000 square feet. And it will have a zero setback on the north property line, and that's the same as the existing zero setback it currently has. Building plate height will be 12 feet, and overall height will be 18 feet. And as you can see from the slide, the total height of the kitchen addition is lower than the eave of the French Laundry building, and what this does is subordinate it to the historic element. The roofing material will be standing seam, and the siding will be horizontal wood siding, and both of these will be painted in a neutral color. The two non-historic detached structures on the French Laundry parcel will be demolished, as will the north house on the adjacent parcel and all of the accessory structures. And the reason for doing this is to allow a new annex building to be constructed in its place. And it is the building shown on the right-hand side of this lower slide. And it's a one-story structure that will have a complete basement. The basement will contain the wine cellar for more than 17,000 bottles of wine. It allows the applicant to move all of the wine onto this facility. The ground floor will contain a prep kitchen, dry goods storage, office space, and a conference room, and 3 restrooms. The building is approximately 2,200 square feet, and it will be set back 5 feet at the northeast corner, increasing to about 18 feet at the southeast corner. The other setbacks are interior on the property and really aren't worth noting. So as with the kitchen addition, the siding will be wood, the roofing will be the standing seam metal, and it will be painted to match existing. This building will, in addition, feature a corner that wraps around the southwest corner and along the south elevation, and it will be stone. And at that southwest corner, there will be a viewing window so that as you approach the new entry, you can have a view down into the wine cellar. Also proposed is a new loop driveway at the southwest corner of this annex building, and it will provide a new arrival and departure point for guests so that drop-offs and pickups can occur outside of the right-of-way. And a driver can either leave the vehicle with a parking attendant, and a French Laundry employee will park the vehicle, or they can drop off their passengers and park the car themselves and return. But what this entry court does is create a new entry sequence for the guests. It will bring them through the garden and past the Fritted Glass corner of the kitchen building to the front door. And this is a grand new entry for the French Laundry that it really has been lacking up until this point. There are hardscape and landscape improvements that are marked with a series of stone walls. One is a 30-inch stone wall at the entry of the loop driveway. Another is a 7-foot stone wall on the south side of the driveway to screen the residence that will be retained, or the structure that will be retained. An 7-foot tall stone wall is proposed for the north side of the driveway, and the purpose of this wall is to block headlights from entering the courtyard and ultimately the windows of the French Laundry building. An 8-foot tall CMU wall is proposed for the east property line, and the purpose of that wall is to mitigate noise and light impacts to the adjoining residential property. And a series of lower 21-inch stone walls and benches will complete the design and be placed on the path to the front door. A new landscaping plan will include trees at the east and north sides of the entry court, a new 60-inch box specimen maple near the lawn, and new espaliered flowering pears along the west edge of the lawn. Other plants proposed are drought tolerant and include rosemary, verbena, sage, manzanita, and several types of grasses and ferns. The applicant is proposing 2 different options to modify the existing parking lot to better accommodate guest vehicles and also to decrease the parking burden on the neighborhood. And option 1 allows 8 spaces in the really the current configuration of the parking lot. And what that does is maintain the landscape planter, but it results in circulation that is somewhat difficult. In one instance, up to 5 cars need to be removed to get the cars that are deepest set in the lot. Option 2 provides 9 spaces total, which is a net gain of 3. It does eliminate the landscape planter, and it does increase the driveway width from 20 feet to 41 feet, but it achieves tandem parking really in a functional manner with cars stacked 2 deep on 3 of the 4 rows and 3 deep on the last row. And to address the loss of landscaping, the applicant is proposing 4 new trees within the lot to really soften its effect on the street. And so I note in the staff report that these 2 parcels were recently rezoned from Old Town Historic, which is a residential zoning designation, to retained commercial, and that's a commercial designation, and it's a new designation in the town's code. The purpose of the district is to permit the commercial development of the lot that's adjacent to the French Laundry, the one that is the subject of the staff report, and then also to allow and encourage the retention of the commercial uses, in this case, the French Laundry. So I go through the different development standards, and this project complies with all of those. The FAR is below the 40% FAR that's permitted. The setbacks either maintain existing setbacks, such as a 0 setback on the north side at the kitchen addition, or they increase the setback for the annex, where it's increased from 3 feet to 5 feet at the north end, but up to 18 feet on the south end. Building size for the new building is consistent with the requirement that a building should be 2,500 square feet or less, but the regulation does allow some flexibility for a larger building where after taking into consideration the needs of the business, the actual setback and the impact on the neighbors, And in this case, it's the kitchen addition that increases the size of the French Laundry building to about 4,000 square feet. But obviously, it goes without saying, the kitchen needs to be attached to the restaurant. We're still able to maintain a 20-foot setback, and we find that it's consistent with the standards. The building plate height of 12 feet and the overall height of 18 feet are consistent with the height standards, and the landscaping provides many native and drought-tolerant species. So we find it's fully consistent with the standards. There are just a couple additional issues I wanted to talk about, one of which is the on-site parking. And the French Laundry was developed prior to the current zoning ordinance, so it's legal non-conforming as to parking. And it has 6 spaces under its current permit in the lot that is toward the rear of the property. And that's below the 21 on-site spaces that would be required if the restaurant were newly developed today under the town standards. But it isn't, so it's considered legal non-conforming, and it's allowed to maintain its 6-space parking lot. In addition, the retained commercial zoning district specifically acknowledges that the current number of spaces is accepted and may be maintained. They're only required to come up to current standard upon a change in use. And in this case, we have a 62-seat restaurant that will continue to be a 62-seat restaurant. No additional seats are proposed. And all the changes are to support the French Laundry in its existing capacity. So we find that it is consistent. Nonetheless, the applicant is proposing to reconfigure the parking lot to gain an additional 2 or 3 spaces. And staff supports option 2, which gains the 3 spaces because this is more functional to a great degree. Sorry about that.
No, it's just the sun on the floor. That's all it is. No, it's way down at the other end. Oh, you're just going to do them all. Okay.
So as I was saying, we support option 2. And it is unfortunate that we lose the planter and that we gain an increased driveway width, but we think that some of these issues are mitigated with the additional plantings in the parking lot, and so we do offer it our full support. In the staff report, we also mentioned the on-street parking situation, and
Oh, he's going to get it.
on Washington Street. Doesn't it just figure it's the last one?
It's the last one, of course.
On Washington Street, we lose 2 spaces with the new loop driveway, but these can be accommodated at the north end of the street if we eliminate a no parking sign. So we are satisfied with the fact that there's no loss of on-street parking. On Creek Street, however, we believe there's an opportunity to make some changes that will benefit both the restaurant as well as the neighborhood by providing more neighborhood parking. And this can be achieved if Creek Street were made a one-way street going east, and that would allow parking on the south side for up to 5 spaces. It's not likely that we could maintain 2-way traffic on Creek Street and allow this additional parking, so we do think it's something that is worth looking into. We've had the Department of Public Works give a preliminary opinion on it, and they think that the realignment could be both functional and very workable and gain these parking spaces. We haven't done an in-depth study, so we have included a condition of approval that the applicant submit a design drawing to indicate how this can be met. In the staff report, I note the general plan policies on replacement housing that are triggered either by a rezone or a loss of affordable housing, and I explain in the staff report why neither of those programs is triggered by this current project, and I'd be happy to go into that in more detail, but it's explained in the staff report. The last issue relates to historic resources, and that's because the French Laundry is on the National Register. So we had the applicant submit 2 different reports. One evaluated whether all of these changes to the French Laundry would in any way impact its listing on that register, and the reviewer found that the new buildings were behind and to the side of the French Laundry, They were simple in architecture, they were lower in height, and because of this, they were subordinate to the French Laundry, and it was able to maintain its historic integrity. The other report evaluated the historic significance of the dwelling that is slated for demolition, and the reviewer found that this building had already lost its physical integrity due to extensive alterations and that no mitigation measures were required. So we are recommending that you discuss the project and make a vote count recommendation to the town council. We are recommending that that would be a recommendation of approval, and staff is very supportive of this application, and I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Sandra. Any questions of Sandra to start? Commissioner Lass? Commissioner Cook?
Of course.
Thank you.
In reading through the details, it spelled out that open space needs to be 15%?
Correct.
And this meets that?
Yes, this is well above the 15%.
Right. Are there any restrictions in the code that a percentage of that, I mean, how much of that can be paved?
No.
Okay.
There's a restriction that it can't apply to the parking lot, but otherwise, if it's a courtyard area or a garden area, even if it's paved, it can count toward open space.
Okay. As far as the Creek Street one-way idea, I know that's under development. Has the residents been contacted?
We sent out a 300-foot notice to all residents within 300 feet of the project, letting them know that this was an item under consideration with this application, so that they would have early notice of it. And we may hear from some of them tonight. It is early in the review stage, so we're not really prepared to make a final decision on the street alignment.
Okay. The ADA parking requirement, is there an official one? And does having the vehicle pretty much need to be valet parked meet that requirement?
The ADA space is located in the parking lot. It is the space furthest in and with the shortest path of travel to the front door.
True.
So that does meet the ADA requirement. Since there will be a parking attendant associated with this lot, all of the vehicles can be removed so that a disabled person wishing to park their own vehicle can do it. And they're better able to manage that because all drop-off and departures occur through the loop driveway, so they'll have advance warning if somebody would like to bring their car in.
But they would have to stop at the loop first and ask, and then have people
Which
move
all
cars.
guests will
And
stop at
that's-
the loop anyway, so.
Okay. If they know it's there. Okay. Those are my questions.
Or they'll stop at your house and ask where the French
There you-
Laundry is.
that happens
as
every
they
day.
do for everyone. So I got a couple questions. One, there's the sign, no parking from here to the corner. Did you say that was going to be removed to allow for parking up front?
That will be removed to allow 2 spaces
Okay.
adjacent to that planter at the corner.
Okay. And then, I apologize, but I am confused. The loop is on Washington, furthest from where the second building is and just loops around towards the entry?
I'll stand up and.
Yeah, please. I'm sorry.
This is the French Laundry corner building.
Okay, it is.
This is the loop driveway.
All right.
Come in, drop off here, and this is the new entry that brings you through the garden to the front door.
Okay, all right.
Instead of it being a sort of
Correct.
almost a backside entrance, even though it's from the front of the corner.
Okay.
And the glass corner you said will that be visible?
Right
from
here on the kitchen.
And will that be visible from the road? The glass wall?
Pardon me?
Will that be visible from the road?
Potentially some of it, but there is landscape screening here, and it is set further back in on the property.
Is there a current loading zone for the property, for the deliveries? Or is it meant to be?
There's not
in
an
the-
official loading zone, but the corner with the no parking sign on Washington serves as a guest loading zone. And then on Creek Street, there's additionally sort of an informal loading zone. The changes to Creek Street provide an opportunity to formalize that, as well as south side parking on that street.
Okay. One last question. At the council meeting when the discussion was had to rezone this. I apologize, but I couldn't find, or I wasn't aware of any other discussion from the neighbors or anything. From what I read and from what I saw, it was, everybody felt it was a good idea. Is that correct?
Yes, and I don't,
including the public?
I don't believe that the public commented on it.
That was
they?
my understanding as well.
Yeah.
Okay,
No.
very good. All right, any other questions of staff? No. Very good. Then I'll invite the applicant to come up and speak.
Good evening. My name is Douglas Burnham. I'm the principal of Envelope Architecture and Design, and I'm here representing the Thomas Keller Restaurant Group and also Snøhetta, which is an architecture firm in New York and Oslo, who we're collaborating with on the architecture, and they're doing the landscape architecture. So the proposed renovations and additions are being undertaken to ensure the legacy of the French Laundry and to maintain its reputation as one of the best restaurants in the world. These changes revolve around enhancing the guest experience, which include an increased functionality of the kitchen and support functions, visual access to the kitchen from the garden and vice versa, enhancing and extending the historic garden for the enjoyment of the guests, and creating an arbored on-site drop-off and pickup zone on the southern edge of the property, access from Washington. That drop-off will extend the kind of the entry sequence of the guest to actually bring people through the historic garden, which we think is a very large improvement and enhancement of the guest experience. So, although the continually rated as one of the best restaurants in the world, the existing facilities at the French Laundry are undersized for the caliber of the food and service that they provide. One example which Sandra brought up was the wine cellar, which 2/3 of which the wine is housed off-site. This new project will allow a cohesive wine cellar in the basement of the kitchen annex building, so that the whole wine cellar can be together. And one thing that we thought would be interesting and important to see is a comparison of the floor area of Per Se, which is Thomas Keller's restaurant in the Time Warner Center in New York. Per Se is about 14,500 square feet, and if you look at the ratio of, it also has 62 seats, like the French Laundry. If you look at the ratio of back-of-house support to per seat, it's actually 130 square feet per seat. The current French Laundry, in its existing condition, is 51 square feet. This new project will change that ratio to 82 square feet. So, the French Laundry is not your normal restaurant. It actually requires a significant amount of service and kind of preparation and kind of on-site housing of complex functions. And so so that's the primary kind of impetus of the project. Going through, Sandra actually brought you through the elevations, but I'd like to maybe just go through the plan, and I think I can point.
You can just click too.
Yeah, great. So I'm going to just point a little bit. So this is the existing French Laundry on the corner of Washington and Creek. This is what we call the breezeway. And then the existing kitchen exists right here. The new kitchen actually is the same length as the existing kitchen along Creek, but it completes, it kind of boxes this area out. It fills in the U here of the existing kitchen. In order to do this project, we're removing two support annex buildings, which are currently on the French Laundry property. This is what we call Kitchen Annex, which houses a very small wine cellar, kind of breakdown room and offices. And this is a building that has bathrooms and some storage in it. So both of these will be removed. The existing residence to the north on the separate parcel will be demolished, and an existing garage and shed structure will also be demolished. The structure to the south will remain. So looking at the new plan, this is the new kitchen itself. As Sandra brought up, there is the Fritted Glass corner, which is really the connection between the garden and the kitchen. And it's really, we think it's an important two-way connection. It's so that the chefs can actually be a part of the garden, and that the guests can actually get a glimpse into the kitchen as they are approaching the French Laundry. The kitchen annex houses kind of back of house prep, breakdown, and dry goods, offices, and a conference room, and also accessible restrooms. And the lower level is primarily a wine cellar and also additional storage. The drop-off loop off of Washington is really, it's a one-way drop-off where cars will come in off of Washington and stop. Guests will be dropped off, and they'll move through a new stone wall, a 7-foot tall stone wall, and will move toward the French Laundry, the historic French Laundry structure, and be kind of adjusted on their path by a widening hardscape area. And these benches, also out of stone, will direct the path to the front door of the French Laundry. Cars will either be taken by attendant around to the existing parking area, or will be brought by the guests over to that area. Sandra mentioned that there are two parking schemes that we are proposing, one of which retains the planter and has 8 spaces, another of which eliminates the planter and in its place creates somewhat of an arbored parking area. I think that we prefer scheme 1, mostly because it respects the residential character of Creek more. It has a narrower width here, opening to the parking area, whereas this is a full 40 feet in width. But the addition of the trees on option 2 are mitigating that to try to make it downplay that large area. Going to the elevations, I'm not going to go through each of the elevations, but they're in the deck if you have questions about them. But the important part about the new addition is that it really is respecting the height of the existing historic French Laundry building, that we are taking the eave height, and we are making sure that the peak of the buildings do not go above that point. And so that's 18 feet above finished floor. We're also taking the spring line of 12 feet, and we're setting that to integrate with the existing height of the existing breezeway. So we're trying to basically kind of make it feel like it's cohesive and supporting, and that the primary architectural quality of the buildings is that their background and support, they are minimal in style to be diminutive to the historic French Laundry building. This is a rendering from the drop-off area. You can see that there's permeable pavers where the cars will be dropped off, and this is really the kind of auto path, and then grass will be allowed to grow through where cars don't go. There's a kind of entry portal here, which is entering the historic garden. And here you're looking at the side of the annex building. There's actually it appears as if the stone wall, the stone site wall, has wrapped around the building, and that is an intentional thing to really to almost cloak the building in the landscape wall. We're also have a trellis element all along this edge to bring down the spring line of the gable structure to diminish the kind of sense of building. We're really trying to merge building and landscape together, especially from this view. And this trellised edge here is actually a kind of thickened edge that has garden inside of it, actually a shade garden inside of it. So the different benches that are happening, this is one example of a basalt bench. We're using basalt because it's actually what the French Laundry is made out of, although this is ashlar, it's cut basalt. The French Laundry is kind of rubble, rough basalt. And then this is the view as you've entered into the garden. You can see the kind of the quality of the existing French Laundry garden is maintained. We're really just enhancing the plantings. The sense of the existing garden is that it's primarily a kind of organized by the lawn as a kind of open area with hardscape areas around. So the guest experience would be moving along this hardscape path and toward the blue door, which is really the entrance into the restaurant itself. The fritted glass is actually happening right here on this facade, and we have an example of that, which I'll show at the end. On the right-hand side in this rendering is the kind of trellised arbor, which will be planted both on its surface and inside of it. And again, here we're trying to really merge garden and architecture. So looking at some materials, we have a kind of trellis, kind of lattice edge, a kind of different uses of basalt stone here as a kind of rougher, more natural cleft face stone, and then here as a more ashlar version of basalt that it's cut for pavers. We're also using in the driveway a precast concrete paver of similar kind of color and tone to the basalt, and a kind of white gravel in areas that are not required to be accessible to increase the permeability of the ground. And then some of the landscape materials. Again, there's a kind of a paving pattern where the grass or the kind of vegetation is allowed to grow up through in less traveled areas. There are almond trees, which will be part of the arbor of the drop-off, and so the idea of the drop-off area is that it is a garden in its own right. It's a treed arbor, and that the kind of hardscape moves through that zone. There will be a new 60-inch box maple tree, which is placed kind of at the corner of the historic garden, and then espalier pears along Washington Street as a kind of visual screen, a kind of organized, cultured landscape. There's also different planting zones. There's a kind of what Snøhetta calls a kind of sun garden, which are native and drought-tolerant species. And then there's shade garden plantings, which are more like ferns and helleborus, which happen only in the area behind the trellis here. And then these columnar trees are along the entry here to kind of signal the entry and a kind of gateway to reinforce the gateway into the garden. And then this is the example of the fritted glass. So frit is really, in its technical term, it's actually a kind of ceramic baked-in surface into the glass. I think that here we're using it a little more loosely. It's more of a silk screen The idea here is that it's a geometricized natural pattern that would obscure vision above and below and leave a kind of a zone in the middle between about 4 feet above the floor and 8 feet above the floor as kind of free to view. And so it ends up feeling as if it's really kind of taken off on the historic, the corner of the historic French Laundry building where ivy is really growing over the building, and it's directly across from that. And so it's this kind of architecturalized version of a kind of natural pattern. And so I have the elevations, and I can go through all of those if you have questions, but this ends my presentation.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Cook?
Yeah.
Please.
I'll just go down my list out of order, if that's okay.
Yep.
How will people know to use the loop driveway?
Well, it's not in our proposal, but there will be a sign out there. There's a stone wall that kind of signals that edge, and we feel that there will be a sign. It's not included in this design review package, but there will be signage.
It would be, I think it was referenced that it would be a flat in the wall kind of sign.
It would be
like the
on the wall,
main sign.
right? Probably
Okay.
just like it is down closer to the corner of Washington and Creek.
Which people don't see. We know that people never find the French Laundry, and so I'm not sure that they would find the driveway.
Mm-hmm.
I think, let me back up one step.
Mm-hmm.
I think you've done an amazing job with a very awkward piece of property, and you've come up with some really creative ideas. So
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to see it work. And I think the loop driveway is a good idea if people use it.
I mean, I think that it's it may take some wayfinding, really, that there may need to be arrows or kind of other ways of really opening up the kind of entry point into it. I think that that's an important thing, that it really feels like it's something, when people are visiting a place, they are typically looking for a parking lot.
That's true.
Yeah, and when people make their reservations, they would be told to,
That
there is
yeah.
a guest drop-off off of Washington, and there'll be an address there, and
They'd
so
be
they
looking
could,
for
they
it
could,
that way.
They could
That's
put it
probably a
into
really
their
good idea.
iPhones.
Yeah. Okay. There was a little bit. I love the look of the new buildings. I think they're a touch modern. The interior courtyard is a touch modern for that part of town. So I'm looking at it from the outside and how you've sort of camouflaged it or addressed it from the street view.
Mm-hmm.
And the height of the espalier trees will be...
Well, they take time to grow,
True.
and they will grow. But I think they would be between 7 and 8 feet.
Okay. And will they be planting something more than a stick? Will they already be espalier?
They would be planted with a larger, maybe 4 foot tall,
Okay.
kind of 5 foot wide, in series.
So pretty much from the street or from across the street, looking
right.
at the front, you'll see the French
Yeah.
Laundry French Laundry restaurant building, and then you'll see these espalier trees pretty much until you get to the opening.
That's right.
In the wall.
Yeah, I think that the idea is to densify that edge
Mm-hmm.
with vegetation, and there's some box myrtle, I think, that is being proposed as well. Right now, it actually is a pretty great visual screen. There's the stone wall and a series of trees and bench
Right. Yeah, it's very-
and bushes. And so really what we're looking to do is enhance that and to kind of filter it out.
But the
even
plum
more.
trees are coming out.
The plum trees
Yeah.
are coming out.
And
right.
is
but
there-
the lower elements would be replaced,
The
which
hedges,
is this
okay.
kind of human height.
Is there, I can't really tell from the plan view that we have, is there a wall, there's the existing site wall of
Yes, which
stone,
will remain.
and then the espalier trees. Is there a wall on the back side of the trees to the lawn?
There are kind of
I see him
seating
shaking his
areas.
head.
They're
Okay.
really kind of gathering areas just for waiting before you go into the laundry.
Okay, but
They're
no-
like,
no tall wall.
small little, yeah.
Okay.
No second wall.
If if you get down to going out to the parking on Washington Street, there's that no parking past this point to the corner, and we were talking about getting rid of that. Won't those cars cover up the French Laundry sign?
Well, the French Laundry sign would move. The idea is that we're really moving the front door, the kind of guest experience of the front door, to the drop-off.
Okay.
That's the whole, really the whole point, is that the guest experience begins at the drop-off.
Okay.
And so it will really be the front door. That's kind of the point.
Okay, that's another good step too. My last question is, between the pavers, will it be planted with grass?
It will be planted.
I don't think it will the parking be grass, area and into.
It'll be more like a
thyme,
like a lemon thyme, or
all the way through the courtyard.
All the way through the courtyard, and then what happens is that when the cars are driving on it, that it doesn't grow in those areas, but it grows in areas that are less traveled.
But the intention is to plant it.
The intention is to plant it.
Okay. All right. Those are all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Les, any questions? No. I just have two. Does the lawn have some sort of history at the gardens that it's being kept?
Well, it's being moved. There's actually geothermal piles that are underneath the existing lawn, and so we really needed to maintain it as a kind of unadulterated area that was sort of easily accessible. The French Laundry is on a geothermal system, which basically uses a heat pump and then cycles the cooler water from the ground.
Mm-hmm. All right. And then, was a parking study done of how many people bring their cars and park their cars, or how many people come via a driver, or anything like that?
So the French Laundry has done some informal sampling. There's a variety of ways that people come. Some people drive, and many people come with 4 people or 3 people to a car because they're usually groups. People come by limousine. There's also shuttle, and many people walk because they're staying in town. And so that's just an informal study. Mm-hmm. There's also just an informal study that the French Laundry staff has done, looking at available parking on city streets during kind of peak times, and they have consistently counted 4 to 5 kind of open spaces in the neighborhood. But this is, just the French Laundry study. This is not any kind of larger study. Okay. We think that with the existing non-conforming situation, that we're making the parking better by 30% or 40%, depending on how you look at it.
And then any parking study done on your staff, and how many of them drive?
Again, not a formal study.
Okay.
It's kind of a variety of ways that people come. Some people live in town and they walk, and others drive.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Will there be any other discussion from the applicant? Anybody else? No. Excellent. Then is there anybody in the audience who'd like to speak to this matter at the moment? Please, come on up, state your name. We'd like to hear what you have to say. It's not often we see a crowd.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to say good luck to the French Laundry. They've been very good neighbors, and it's not really their fault that their guests don't abide by the rules. My concern is, I've lived in Yountville all my life, and this making the Creek Street. Now, I don't know if that's part of your agenda tonight or not. I heard it was. You said we were supposed to get letters. We never received a letter. We actually received a phone call by somebody we know about turning it into a one-way street. I'm not happy about that. Mm-hmm. It makes me feel like, suddenly, are we living in the city? You guys started off with one street that was always a two-way street. Now it's Creek Street. And is it going to grow that way? Is it going to continue? Suddenly every street in Yountville is going to be a one-way street, or most of the streets are going to be one-way street. We live in Old Town. And you guys are always talking about how Old Town has to stay by certain standards. But it doesn't. I mean, every time we turn around, there's something different. Like I said, I have no problem with what the French Laundry's doing. I think it's going to be beautiful. I think it's going to be wonderful. All they've done is improve the whole area there. My hat's off to them. But now you're messing with the one street that we walk down every day, and we love the street. I mean, you feel safe down that street. There isn't all that. That's the only street that doesn't have 100 cars in it and people fighting for parking spots, or anything like that. And there's cars coming and there's cars going. Well, after a few glasses of wine in the wine tasting room, people aren't even going to see the sign more than likely. I could almost guarantee that's going to happen. It just makes me upset that you want to change that street after so many years. I just don't think it's right. I think it's wrong. And I think maybe they should look into something else. I don't mind that they want to take 3 parking spaces down on that side of the street. That doesn't, over by, we used to call it the White House. I believe Thomas's house. But that's what it was always called. It was called the White House. Don't ask me why. It was just, it's where we got our pies from and stuff. French Laundry is where we got our eggs from. I mean, if they want to go down that street, take 3 parking spots, at the end over there, no problem. I just don't think it should be a one-way street. I just think it's wrong, And with the delivery trucks, sometimes you don't have any choice. You either have to go down Washington Street or Creek Street. It's not that big of a deal, I got to tell you. You just look out there, and when you're pulling out, you just figure it out, But when you only give us the one choice, what happens when these cars start, it's a one-way street. We could kind of double up here, or we could do whatever we want here, and nobody's paying any attention. Suddenly we're stuck on the street. If we go down Washington Street, you have a one-way sign. You're only going to go down that one-way street. I mean, you don't have much of a choice there, And that's my concern, is I think it's just going to be too much for that little tiny street. I mean, the street's only so big. Let's just, keep it the way it is.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
What would you think? Right now there's parking only on the residential side. What if it was changed that parking was only on the other side? Because there's only one driveway on that side. It might give more parking. And then there was no parking on the residential side. What do you
mean, one driveway? You mean on Thomas's side?
The side that currently... What if you move the only parking on one side, from the residence to Thomas's side?
I think from where his kitchen part is, on to the corner, going off Jefferson Street, you could fit. We've seen it. You could fit about 4 or 5 cars in there. They want to park there, that'd be great. But parking directly like where we have to pull out, that becomes kind of a hassle too. Especially at nighttime when people don't have their lights on or anything, and you're not thinking there's going to be a car there, and suddenly somebody pulls out and parks there, and suddenly there's a car. I think there'll probably be a couple of run-ins, and it's come close to it a few times, even though with the sign there, because I said people don't obey that all the time. They just don't. They just figure they don't have to.
Okay, just a question.
That's
being considered. I'm just throwing it out.
That's what we're here for, is Creek Street. What the French Laundry is doing, I think it's amazing. I think it's wonderful. I wish them the best of luck, and I hope they get what they want. He's worked hard for it. The kids have worked hard for it. I hope you guys are understandable about that and let them have what they want. I'm just concerned about Creek Street. You guys got to keep Creek Street the way it is.
Thank you.
And that's it.
Thank you, Rose.
Thank you.
And I just want to be clear that we we want the public input, we want the public comments, but the discussion for Creek Street will be done at a future time. And that was just an aspect that was commented on because of this redesign being done to affect that. So it will come up at a future time, just not.
We will get a letter.
Yeah, thank you. I will, that was going to be one of my suggestions, that possibly, I understand we do send letters out, but possibly with something that's going to affect that, maybe a knock on the door might be good too. And I'd be willing to do it when I walk the dog by.
Okay. I do want to comment that if there's any way we can maintain two-way traffic and parking on both sides of the street, that of course would be preferred. I want to raise the option that it is, or just the concern that it is a narrow street, so that everyone is aware that may be an option out there. I don't think we have an answer at this point, and I'm glad that we're getting some feedback.
I agree.
Before there's a decision.
And just one other thing, that's why I asked about a parking study. I mean, if we're going to do something like that, I think a legitimate parking study needs to be done by the business that contributes so much to that immediate small area, including the loading, including the deliveries that are made specifically to the French Laundry. I mean, I know you don't have a Cisco truck coming, which is great, but a lot of people in town too. So, I mean, I think that a parking study should be, and a delivery study should be a part of that as well. So, any other discussion, any other comments from the public at all concerning this matter?
I had something on Creek Street, but we're going to wait on that, that's fine.
Thank you very much, and we will. And we definitely, it will be come up in further discussions, definitely. And then we can, the staff can take that into consideration then, if you just want to drop that off, and that'll be great. But it definitely will come up for further discussion in the future as well.
One quick comment on that.
If you do, please come up. But if you do, just please come up, introduce yourselves, and we'd be happy to hear from you.
Renee Solis. My biggest concern with the one-way street, you're sending, like all these cars right here that are going east the way you're talking about, are going into a neighborhood. You're sending more and more cars into Jefferson Street. They're going to be going each way. Then they're going to be coming around Starkey or down. And do we need more traffic in the residential areas? We don't need any more of that. It's a safety thing. There's, kids out there. Let's not send cars into into residential. Let's keep them off of. Let's keep them on Washington Street, not into a residential area.
Thank you very much.
I'll talk about it more later.
Yeah, please do, but please
That's
leave
my biggest safety concern right there.
Very good. Thank you. And if you leave those photos with the staff, we'll take those as well. Any other discussions from the public? Excellent. Then we will close off all of the public comments and move towards the Commissioner's discussions. Shall we start with Commissioner Cook?
Overall, I really like what they've done. You heard my comments. I think it's a little bit modern for the neighborhood, but I think they've addressed the landscaping very well for mitigating that, what it looks like from the street. I think it will still look landscaped instead of what you see within the courtyard, which is beautiful. My only concern kind of comes around when you get onto Creek Street, where the current elevation of the kitchen is very much in the style of Old Town, where it has several different buildings and roof heights and structures that it kind of matches what we try and keep as our goal of the Old Town district. And it's being replaced with a big solid wall. And if there was some way to make that so it didn't look so much like the backside of a building, I think that would be important to the neighborhood. And that kind of goes around the corner into the options for the parking lot too. Again, looking into the parking lot right now, it's almost like looking into a courtyard. There's lots of little nooks and crannies and stone walls and planters and things like that. And on the new plan, there's one big flat wall and another flat wall at the end. So in that way, I kind of agree that I prefer parking option 1 because it's not such a big chunk. I could almost see taking parking option 1, not having any changes to the east elevation of the kitchen, and having that kind of satisfy that side. I would still like to see something on the north elevation of the kitchen, though. And I think that's about it.
Thank you. Commissioner Cook, Commissioner Laz, your recommendations?
I think it looks great. I think they're being very mindful of creative, and I do think there's probably a need for more space. That makes sense. The only thing I'm thinking is this roundabout on the main street of Washington Street. I don't know how that affects traffic in an already kind of congested area sometimes, and I don't know if it might help it because right now there's nothing. So people are dropping, drivers are dropping people off on that corner, which is total congestion. So maybe this will help it, I'm not sure, but just thinking about the whole one-way, sometimes confusing scenario with masonry, and then thinking about this, which is, on Washington as well. I just don't know how that will affect it, that's all. But we're not deciding if that's approved or not, right?
You're making a recommendation to the council. And there are the conditions of approval that are proposed, but if you'd like to add any, as I hear from you, Chair Durham, you may. It would be important to include those now.
So if I might piggyback on that then. As you just alluded to, I firmly believe whether, especially given the discussion tonight, that a parking study needs to be done. And if that includes deliveries, staff, what all the components of that should be done by the applicant. I think that's a condition that needs to be done. Also, I tend to agree with Commissioner Cook in terms of the massing on Creek Street. It does remove all those elements up top that you could see right now, but all of a sudden we've created a wall on Creek Street, 2 giant walls. Maybe it's just a concern, and maybe it's my just walking down the streets and trying to get a solid feel for that block, but that's just a concern of mine. I do agree that I'd rather not choose a parking option because I think a parking study should be done, and then that the proper parking option could be chosen at that time. But but everything else I think is great. I understand completely. The French Laundry needs to continue to move forward and needs to continue to add to its experience for its guests, and the French Laundry is a huge element of Yountville, and I think this is a great addition to continue that legacy on. So, with that being said, one of you need to make a motion to recommend the approval with the conditions of approval that have been stated as well. Please.
Okay, I will give it a try. Tell me if you want to add anything to it. We can make it a group motion. I would make a motion to recommend approval to the town council with the following conditions set by staff, along with the creation of a parking study to include deliveries and employees parking along with guests, and to present a modified design of the north elevation of the kitchen addition to better blend in with the old town.
Do I hear a second?
I second that.
Excellent. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Then we have moved forward for that. Thank you very much. I love when there's a crowd here.
I know. It's kind of fun. we done?
No, two more.
Oh,
Two
okay.
more short things. Good timing. We'll move on to agenda item number 9, staff and board reports.
So, just this week, the town staff has provided comments on our housing element update to our consultant. So we should see the revisions made, and I anticipate bringing that before you at your June meeting to review the housing element. Also, the council is in budget discussions, and one item that we took to them today was to consider whether they'd like to do a general plan update. And there was some support for putting money aside for a budget in order to build up an account over the next couple of years so that we could approach a general plan update. It's a very expensive proposition, perhaps $500,000 to $700,000. So we are seeing support from the council to at least start planning for the future, even if we don't move forward with it this year. When it comes to development projects, I don't really have anything to report. We don't have any new applications. We're still waiting to issue building permits for Stewart, but they're in the final round of reviews, and we have the last few permits to issue out at Vineyard Oaks, but otherwise there's no real construction activity. So, except for Allen, I can mention that. That did start,
Yes, it
and
did.
you're seeing the foundation
Oh, yeah.
being built
Yeah.
at the Allen house. So that's all I have to report, unless you have any questions. I'll try to answer them.
What is going on with that corner lot that was
Washington and Starkey.
Washington and Starkey?
Washington and Starkey, that's the Winkleman residence, and they received approval for a new single-family dwelling. They demolished the house that was there. They had planned to get started on it already. They've had some family things come up, so the project is put on hold. They do have design review approval that's good through May of 2015, so they're aware that they have a deadline that's approaching in about a year. So we'll see what happens. You'll see it vacant probably for the next year.
Sorry. Another
I was just
question.
going to ask if there was any update on where R&D Kitchen is. What is that, Washington Square?
It's more.
With all the vacancies?
I
Still
don't
just
have any
vacant and
information.
nothing
Yeah,
happening.
yeah.
Quick question. I forgot to ask the applicant. Is there, once permits are pulled, what's the time frame that they anticipate this to take till completion?
I was actually wondering that too.
They have not shared that entirely with me, but they do want to move forward. They're obviously at their 20-year anniversary, so I think they would be looking to start pretty soon after obtaining approval, and it would take at least a few months. Who knows?
Yeah.
Hopefully not as many as 6.
Didn't they publish that they were closing? Is that unrelated to this project?
Well, it's
They did not
For a
release
couple
that
months?
report, and they
Okay.
in
It's
fact
just
asked
all
for a
on the-
retraction.
it's all on the food blogs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was
But
only
they're
like 2
closing,
months,
yeah.
though.
That was
Some-
all speculation, and
Okay.
it wasn't supported by them.
Okay.
And then, secondly, given the discussion about loading and parking for this project, as I stood in front of Redwood the other day, I witnessed the loading zone on Redwood's parking lot sitting empty, while a delivery truck sat with his flashers on, making a delivery from the middle turn lane in front of Chichio's and Gerard. Now, I don't know where he was delivering to. I mean, there's a lot of choices to deliver, but the truck had positioned himself thus so that every single person who pulled out of Washington Square was forced to take a right and could not
Because they
take a
couldn't get
left
it.
because they could not get across. So I think that the discussion needs to be had moving forward, as when I walk to the post office to drop something off at 8 o'clock in the morning, with everybody coming into school, and the delivery truck is parked on the north side of the street with his flashers on Yount, sorry. So every single person going to drop off their kids to school have to come into the southbound lane, completely come over. I firmly believe that as you move forward, that this discussion needs to be had more thoroughly with the business owners to determine what to do. You know, we laughed about it when I laughed about it, or I made a passive-aggressive joke about it, probably more so, about when Hurley's did the remodel, that they were going to put in that yellow zone and they'd finally have that, but you know, that real parking area, and nobody's using it. Mm-hmm. It's frustrating. So
It's frustrating.
I just, as if, you know, we had the opportunity because they're making the changes here to do this. But I really think that a discussion needs to be had. And I'm going to bring it up here, and this might not be the right place, but the gentleman giving out tickets, who's the volunteer for the police department here, is not doing a service if he's not out there at 8 a.m. when the deliveries are being made. He is out giving tickets at 3:30 on a Sunday afternoon, and that doesn't work. I got one, I fought it, I lost, I paid it, okay? That's fine. But he needs to be out there at 8 a.m. when the deliveries are being made.
So you bring up a very fair point. When
Yeah,
we do condition new projects, we require that they do deliveries on site. It becomes an enforcement issue when they don't, and it's hard for staff because we're not out there, and it's obviously the sheriff's department that enforces. In this case, for French Laundry, we know they can't accommodate the delivery trucks on site, so we're trying to plan for an on-street place for them. But Jeff, a very legitimate concern that all of our businesses face because we have narrow streets, we don't have dedicated delivery zones. And then, you know, when it comes to North Block Hotel, we've been working with the general manager there because they would like to eliminate that on-site delivery zone and add 3 more parking spaces. So something that we've given them our support and essentially approval for, and they will move forward perhaps. I don't know.
Good.
So we're always willing to discuss it with owners
Of
when
course,
things aren't working.
and the main reason for my statement now is possibly if across the office to the police department could be noted that possibly the gentleman giving tickets 8 o'clock in the morning a couple of times could at least make a statement in this town, you know. God knows in San Francisco, nobody parks on the 7 to 9, Monday, Wednesday, Friday on that side of the street, you know, because they know.
Well, the sheriff can give tickets for that,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
I've seen the sheriff drive by that very loading truck in the middle of the street between Girard and Chichio. I saw him drive by it this morning.
Yeah. And I'll give him the benefit of the doubt because they have only because they have that volunteer gentleman doing it now, which is great. So at least let's focus on getting him here at the right time and not pissing off all the locals and all the tourists as well. Let's focus on that and then work towards the scofflaws like me.
There you go.
Thank you.
Move you
Any
down
other
the
comments?
list.
Any other comments? Great.
It's my favorite word, scofflaw.
Then we will see you all on June 10th. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
All right. That was good discussion tonight.
That's very good.